Hi, I'm Chayale.
Hi, I'm Hinty. Welcome to Your Relationshift. Join in our conversation where we explore
The nuance and beauty of Torah's perspective on relationships.
Yes, Hyla.
Hey,
So we have a question coming in.
we got a really good question and a super important one, and I think something that a number of people are curious about and will be happy to hear us discussing. And the question is from somebody who says that they really do appreciate a lot of what relationship has to offer, but they're finding themselves a little confused because we seem to be suggesting that having any expectations is not a good thing, and taking this very sort of extreme approach on having expectations of your marriage or your relationship or your husband. And that's like, how does that make sense? And how is that realistic? And there are just some very fundamental and basic expectations that make up, healthy people and healthy relationships. And like, where would we be without those? And how would we suggest otherwise? When it comes to some very basic and fundamental areas of health and what makes a relationship sort of function.
Right. And I also feel like the flip side of the same coin is like that concept of like letting him get away with it. Right? So like either the letting him get away with it or so now what? Like so I'm just stuck with this behavior, with this challenge, with this husband. So so what is this going to look like now? Am I supposed to just look at the rest of my life, the next 100 years, living with this? So I get that. I get where they're coming from. There's a very hopeless
Yeah,
and
like
confused.
let's maybe even like reminding people a little bit of toxic positivity, where you're like explaining something away or pretending that something that isn't okay is okay, and it just seems off.
Right. Right. So I don't know if we could dive into like the main difference between what we do and all of that. But I think let's if we just explained kind of what relationship is all about when it comes to, I guess, changing a dynamic, which sounds funny because we don't try to change dynamics by changing him, right? But if we kind of explained relationships approach in the broader context of things, I think it might help to answer this question of why can't I have an expectation?
Yeah, yeah. So we will do our best.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can always come back to us.
right,
Not
right. So I guess important before we even like dive in, important to like lay some groundwork.
Yeah,
So definitely if there's some sort of dynamic and we're talking to the woman who we don't have to talk about control, right? Because we're talking to the woman who has tried all different forms of control. And we've spent so much time on this podcast talking about all different forms of control. We've literally delineated all the different examples of how and what that looks like. You can go back to other episodes like, what are some of the episodes like? Men are like puppies, right? That hard pass episode. There were other episodes where we spoke about the mashpia and mekabel dynamic and like how control doesn't work. So you could go back to those episodes to see a little bit more of our approach towards control. However, when you take control out of the picture, so this is where this woman is at. It sounds like, okay, and now what? So I'm supposed to just like let go of the control, let go of any expectation, and then what? Right? So we're not going to talk about control, but we're going to talk about the next steps.
what enters the space once you have let go of control, and how do you function in that space? If I think we're also talking about things that are maybe a little heavier or maybe a little bigger, and where they don't. Let's say in the example you mentioned, one of the hard passes we did was, let's say, how your husband dresses. So maybe a person would see that and be like, okay, I hear you. Like, it's not crucial. I could live without it. I understand. Like, it's not benefiting me, and I need to create space and let go of control. So that feels maybe that's where people have an easier time understanding the approach. But let's say when it comes to choices around health or parenting or finances, things that feel a lot more dramatic, a lot more fundamental, a lot more crucial, a lot more, I don't know, dangerous or stressful or heavily impacting of our life and the relationship, then those get much trickier to navigate in terms of, so I let go of control and then what, I take my hands off the wheel and the car just crashes. Like, is that what you're suggesting? And that's what a lot of people do feel.
Right, right. A lot of people feel like, okay, I'm just going to let everything crash and burn, which is awful. And that's obviously not the methodology here, right? That's obviously not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to make your life something that you just crash and burn. However, right, before we even like dive into it, I know it's taking us a long time to get there, but this is not necessarily for everyone, like you're saying. Like maybe some women are not in that situation where we're talking about like some really deeply entrenched feelings of expectation where they feel like, no, this is a basic need. Like if I went to anybody, they would say, I deserve this, and this is what a marriage is about. And right, we're talking like basic trust or basic things that are in the ksuba that the husband should provide for his wife. Like anyone would get onto my bandwagon and say that I'm right, right? So those are the expectations we're talking about here in this episode. And I think that's right. That's an important thing to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, which makes it much bigger, right? Because these things are your life. They're huge, which means that it's not, like you said, criticizing or critiquing his way of dressing, which is something you could just like stop when someone just tells you, okay, it's time to stop. These are big things, and it takes time for you to actually do the inner work of making this shift. So we're going to outline what it looks like, but I think it's important to say this is kind of like a huge dynamic that takes some time to undo and for you to actually do the inner work of working through it. And because you're shifting a huge dynamic, it also takes time for your husband to notice that you're shifting the dynamic and for both of you to kind of seesaw.
Yeah. Do you want to bring an example do you have an example?
Yeah, so like let's say a good example, and we don't want to bring something too triggering, but imagine an example, and this is true to life, and I've heard this so many times, where a father is really not showing up for his children, and for whatever the reasons are, right? Maybe it's very justified. So imagine a woman who, or a family whose husband is busy working and he just started this new business and it's taking up so much of his time. And we're talking like, I don't know, 14 to 18 hour long days, and there's just not a moment. So the wife who's trying to hold down the fort is like, okay, forget about me. I know he's not going to talk to me, but what about our kids, right? That's when it gets really painful, really triggering. He's not showing up for them. He's missing out on their childhood. We're talking about someone who's really like an absentee father. Now, again, like we said, anyone's going to jump onto your bandwagon and say, you're right, he's wrong, he has to show up as a better father, you shouldn't be single parenting. And if you want to go in that direction, that's okay, right? Like a lot of people will go in that direction. Relationships approach is very different. So if you want to hear relationships approach, it's going to be different than what you would imagine everyone else is going to tell you.
It's also maybe you want to hear it because you did go down the path that is, let's say, natural or recommended. You did address it very directly, or in smart ways that were indirect, whatever, and you still find yourself in the exact same place. So that's also where Relationshift can step in and offer you something a lot deeper, in terms of your own experience when you want to stay with this person. But you are in this incredibly painful and difficult situation of he's not showing up as a father, and it's also not changing for the foreseeable future, even though you have tried directly whatever. So whatever methods you were recommended or whatever, you pulled in all the stops and the situation is staying the same. So maybe in that case, you want to hear, where's my power? Where's my influence? Where can I find myself and place myself in this?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's outline those other roots just for a second, because I think it's important to pinpoint that there are 4 different variables here, right? So there's the variable of you, the wife, and how painful this experience is, how hard it is to be carrying the household, the children, everything on your shoulders, besides for the loneliness and the isolation that she's experiencing, right? Then there's the husband factor and his whole experience of trying to build a business and let's just say the husband. There's their relationship, which is another factor that we want to take into consideration. And then there's the challenge itself, right? So him being the absentee father and how that's damaging her and her children and her household and their relationship, right? So if you were to take other approaches, right? Let's talk about what of these 4 factors would improve.
So let's say I don't want to speak for other approaches, especially if I don't know what they are. But let's say if just thinking of some of the examples from women that I've worked with, where let's say they've reached out to a rabbi, let's say their husband's mentor, mashpia, or even a therapist, like they've called somebody, some objective person in to address the crisis, and that person has some influence where, let's say, their husband will listen to this person to a certain extent, and they've told him to change his behavior. So he has to, I don't know, set aside this amount of X amount of time to spend with his kids, or he has to, I don't know, they've given him some sort of criteria that like he must show up in this way. I think that's usually the piece that's going to be like addressed most directly. And sometimes, if you're using sort of this like structure of the 4 pieces, I think sometimes that is effective in the sense of, okay, so he puts in his calendar that, twice a week, 3 times a week, he carves out this time, and now he's, I don't know, doing homework, or he's doing 1 shift of bedtime, whatever. There's some, but probably everything else stayed exactly the same. The wife still feels alone, and she still feels like on an energetic level he's absent, and maybe even more frustrated because he followed instructions, right? He was told, this is your requirement, be at dinner twice a week. He showed up, he checked the boxes. Now what's your complaint? So again, that also brings us back here to what am I doing?
Right. So you're saying like there was some sort of like, intervention meeting, and someone like either a third party intervened, or let's say like what you said, she takes this very direct approach and she sits him down and she says, this is what has to change. And then let's say, right, because sometimes it doesn't happen, but let's say he actually does follow through with the protocol, the new protocol. She's still feeling alone, right? So let's look at the 4 factors. She's still feeling alone and feeling like she's carrying the burden. And it in ways actually breaks trust more, because the only reason why he's now showing up is because she pointed it out to him. She got him to do it, right? So even more than before, she feels like she's carrying more burden, because she's carrying a burden of a husband who wouldn't have done that on his own. He doesn't care about his kids on his own. He's carrying because she told him to, right? Or he's showing up because she told him to. And what would happen without her being there, right? The husband factor, even if maybe he does feel good that he's doing the right thing now, or he was shown the wrongdoing of his ways, it still is an emasculating experience, somewhat, to be instructed to do something. I'm not trying to say anything wrong, God forbid, on the wife, but it in our understanding of relationship, when you put the mashpia mekabel dynamic into this picture, she's being mashpia on him, telling him what to do, telling him where to improve, as opposed to her being mekabel, and he's listening, right? He's obeying what she said. So in that realm, it's not our best option in a relationship opinion, right? When it comes to the actual relationship, you can see that because her trust has now been lessened even more, the relationship will take some sort of hit. Also, because his mashpia-ness has been
Reduced.
delegated, instructed, reduced. So now the relationship also is going to be somehow impacted. Now, it's not to say that it's going to be very clear to you, right? It could show up in different ways. So like, let's say for different examples that I've heard and witnessed, where let's say she did this instruction and he shows up, but then he started not enjoying her supper, right? Or now he doesn't want to eat the yogurt that she prepared for him. Or when date night comes around, he starts missing date night, right? Something. Now, we're not trying to say that now she's getting punished, right?
Or
We're
even
just trying to...
she'll feel less attracted.
That's
I'm
true
not
too.
attracted to him.
Right. So the relationship, again, we're not saying has to, right? We're talking about this in the realm of theory, but in our experience, the relationship somewhat suffers. And again, I want to bring in, I think it's so important, she's not feeling great either. Just because she put a piece into place, it still doesn't feel good for her because she's carrying a burden. And then the last piece, which is the challenge itself, also might not be fully resolved, because just because now 3 times a week, I don't know what you said, but like he's making supper, but he's there because he was forced to be there, not because he really wants to be a good parent and he loves his kids. At least she's not seeing that. She's seeing that he's just keeping protocol. So the challenge itself is still unresolved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very well outlined.
Yeah, I think it's important to like hear, right? It's hard to understand. I know for myself, right? Having been in this situation, I didn't know what was going on. So to hear it outlined clearly helps, because you want to know what to do, right? What do you want? We all want to have a loving relationship, a good relationship with our husbands, and for our children to be supported and to feel like we're a safe, great family. So what's going wrong?
Right. Why isn't this working? And it's frustrating.
So painful. So painful. And hopeless feeling. I don't know how to say this. Like, so what do I do, right? It doesn't seem like there are any answers. If I do this, then this is missing. If I don't do this, then I am missing out. Is there a possible route where all 4 factors are okay and balanced and improving? That sounds miraculous. That sounds not even possible. Right?
Enter the hero to save the day. Yeah, it's and again, I think a lot of us have also, knowing or not knowing, maybe made a decision of, okay, I'll pay, the relationship will pay, but the issue is so prevalent, right? We have to address it, meaning, yeah, the relationship's going to pay. Yes, I'm going to pay, right? There will be costs, but I have to, cut my losses, pay those prices, because this is so important. This is so crucial. So again, very logical conclusion. And also coming out of feeling like you don't have other options. So what are you going to do? You have a crisis, you need to resolve it. So I'm going to sacrifice all these other things. So I'll sacrifice all these other things. What choice do I have? That's also that part of that feeling of helplessness, of there's no good way out. So I have to pick my least worst option.
Right. This helpless, hopeless, desperate, impulsive, experience where things just feel like they're spiraling and this is like, I just got to do this. Right? Like and it's like we've said in other parts of the podcast where it's like making a withdrawal from the bank. And sometimes it's okay. Like I think it's important also to say this. This approach is going to be very nuanced. And sometimes you're not going to be doing this perfectly. And there's many different levels of being able to do this. And I highly recommend, if this is your situation, not this exact example, but if you find that there's some sort of relatable example, you could just plug in what your challenge is and how it's impacting you and him and your relationship, then definitely reach out to a coach to see how to measure the nuance of achieving this approach. Right? We're not saying go full force. You could ease into it. I know for myself that there's been levels and layers and settling deeper into it. And it's all supposed to be tailor-made towards you. So this shouldn't feel extreme, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I think also to just add, this is a hard issue to navigate in the context of a podcast because of the level of nuance and complexity, and there's so many pieces that play into it. Personally, I would only navigate it with a coach. I think the value why we're choosing to talk about it here is just so that people know the option is there and that like this is the route. It will look tailor-made to you when you go on it, but it's a route to go reach out and pursue if you're in a situation like this in an area of your life or more than one area of your life. It's a worthwhile pursuit, but highly difficult to do on your own. I don't even know if that's possible, but definitely knowing about it, and then you can go after it with the right support. Okay, so now that we've spent a long time disclaimering, what are we offering?
Okay, so we're oversimplifying it into 3 different steps. Now, each step is huge and takes a tremendous amount of different factors and principles to even do the inner work to achieve. And I'm not going to say that they're linear because nothing ever is linear, right? But there is an element of I've achieved this and I'm ready for the next one. And it could happen at whatever time, but I think it is really important to say that it takes some really deep inner work. Okay, so walk us through the first step, Chayale.
Okay, so I think that something that we would be, again, hard to do, but what we want to look at is an acceptance of this is the situation that I'm in. Why am I saying that? Because a lot of our energy is often just fighting, like this can't be happening and this can't be true. And part of where the energy for fixing and getting solutions comes from is from this can't be happening. Like it's almost like it's not happening and I'm going to just quickly undo it, or I'm going to quickly fix it. And then there's this frustration of it's not getting fixed quick enough. And again, that whole energy of like desperation comes from not being able to sit back and say, this is what's happening right now. Like, this is my life. I am in this situation. And my husband is working this amount of hours, or he is the type of person that doesn't care at the moment, or even personality wise, to be home with his kids. He's much more passionate and ambitious about his career, whatever it is. And like the reality is presenting itself, but you can't accept it. And that's already a source of tremendous amount of pain. You have this across the board where we operate from denial because it just feels too, like if I actually accept it, then I make it more true. And if I can sort of deny it away or fix it away, then maybe that'll just be the solution. So the humility also of like, I am in this situation. Like, I am in a situation where my husband is not around, mostly, or very little. I am on my own a lot. He does not, I am different to my friend whose husband packs sandwiches on a Sunday morning to take the kids out for the day, right? Like these things just setting in and being like, yes, this is my life. It doesn't have to come with like a self-pity, oh poor me, like, oh yes, I'm this very sad, because there is another like type of acceptance, which is like a throwing a pity party for yourself, where a person like leans into the acceptance so heavily of like, my life is terrible and I'm all alone, and right, they like dive there very quickly. But more just like a, can I acknowledge that this is who my husband is? And let's just take another, like, just to throw in another example, let's say a woman notices that like her husband, on the flip side, he has his job, it's his 9 to 5, and he has his salary and he's very comfortable, and she wants more and they need more, and she notices that like, it's not like he's not going for more, and he's comfortable, and he's not, and the sense of like pushing for him to change and pushing for him to get a raise and get a different job and to do something different and to live differently and to think differently and to feel differently and to be a different person, like that is exhausting, where it's just like, this is who he is. Like, can you take a minute and just be like, this is who he is right now, as of today. He's comfortable and happy with his 9 to 5 and his salary and being on benefits and whatever it takes. Like, this is who he is. So can you just breathe and accept, this is it. Like, this is it for now.
Yeah, huge. So, like, so much comes up, I think, for a woman when she hears something like that. Like, that could be really triggering to hear. Like, what, I should just accept it? Like, this is just what's going to be our life, right? She's like running to the next step. I also feel like there's the opposite, where there's some women who do that really well, where they're just like, okay, this is what he is, and I'm just gonna like put my head down and like passively just, okay, now I'm gonna clunk forward and do what I have to do in life. So very important to say that this is supposed to be a creative acceptance. It's not an acceptance where I'm being passive, where I'm just like, okay, now I have to suffer, right? So not that experience of I have to accept this and suffer. It's also not acceptance and now I have to be the one to cover for him because he's not going to, right? We're not saying that either. What we're actually trying to do is, this is like a spiritual shift of, Hashem didn't put me in a situation where I'm supposed to be suffering here. Hashem didn't give me this husband so that I could change him, right? This is happening. Let me not deny God right now, right? Kind of like the example of, imagine I read this in a sefer, a bitachon sefer recently, where, God forbid, right, you're swimming in the ocean and you're getting carried out by the current. Now, you could spend 15 minutes thrashing and trying to fight against the current. Or, like, another survival technique would be to just get on your back and float. And just, it's like a little, you just kind of paddle a little with your head just to make sure that your head is afloat. And you're surrendering to the waves. Now, that's not passive. That is an act of, I don't want to say survival, because, like, survival, we're not trying to survive our life. But it's an act of living, where you're saying, I am in this situation. I know exactly what's happening. I'm not fighting it. I'm going to just be carried with it and see what I could actively do in the next moment. Maybe the current is going to die. And then once that current dies and I could actually swim, I'll see what I can do next. But in this moment, am I fighting it or am I surrendering to it? Am I seeing it for what it is?
Yeah, I think surrender is an amazing word, probably maybe a better word than acceptance, or whatever resonates when you hear either of them. And what essentially we're saying is, acknowledge that this is from Hashem, that this is divine, this is intentional, this is this is part of the very detailed, very specific plan for your life. If you're having in this situation, you're meant to be in this situation. And like you said, it doesn't mean that you're meant to stay there forever and that this is the only situation that you'll ever be in. But right now, fighting it, and I think that's such a beautiful image, like you're using your energy in the wrong way and in the wrong place, and you're just gonna end up exhausted because you're fighting a reality that's here. And that surrender to it, okay, Hashem's here, Hashem's set it up this way, so that means that it's supposed to be exactly like this right now. And then I can actually even access clarity of like, where am I moving to next? And I don't jump to like that extreme helplessness, victimization of, just lie down, doormat, everyone walk all over me, or like the master controller of, okay, so then let me just control the heck out of this situation. We will move through it from that surrendered place of, okay, if God's bringing this to me, then what does God want from me? Where does he want me to go with it?
Right. I'm going to give another example. I hope it's okay. Like, I think women can really relate to it, but imagine the experience of labor, right? So when a woman is in labor, she could, right? There's always the option of feeling like, this is so painful. This is so scary. This is not the way it's supposed to be. My body is crazy, right? Like, what's going on? And there could be a lot of resistance, and all your muscles will freeze up, and all your blood flow, not you, but could run away from the uterus, and then it's very rigid, right? As opposed to what labor is supposed to be, which is there's this wave, and there's an experience, and we're pushing something. And if I allow it to move through my body and I surrender to the journey that it is, I might be able to birth something incredible, right? We're not saying to be passive and like nothing good is going to come from this, right? Maybe the ocean example is not such a good example, because then she's like surrendered and then she's like left stranded in the middle of the ocean, right? So I like this example a little bit better, where it's like, no, Hashem made this happen and you're birthing something, but in the moment it doesn't look like it, right? But if I could stay attuned to, I want to feel what it looks like to work through this in an active way that is also a receptive way, then maybe I'd be able to navigate this from a totally different inner experience and a trust in Hashem, and just like stay with it, stay in the moment instead of freaking out about what's going to happen in the future. Now, that's not to say that this surrender, again, even looks passive, because when we're talking to a woman, and I could speak for myself, what I have done for myself within that step one, which is huge, like that's a huge shift. It takes a lot of time to work through that in your brain. Part of what you're doing at the same time is also deep ownership, right? So taking ownership over myself, over my well-being. How am I doing? Am I showing up to my life? Like, where am I? And really caring for me and owning also what I can do, instead of, right? So like, let's say this is my circle, and before my circle included, let's say, just this challenge. So like, let's say when it came to parenting, my circle is this. Hashem gave me the ability to parent like this, but I was taking on his circle too. So my circle was like this, with many holes, and trying to do so much more than I'm actually able to do. So truly owning my circle of ownership is a very, it's a huge step for me to really take on.
I think that the calming of surrender, acceptance, the mind actually then can access ideas and solutions of like how to manage, like on a very practical level. We're in that place of we're fighting reality, and we're very dysregulated because we're in this like fight mode, like fight or flight, where like you're thrashing in the water, or you're panicking through a contraction. So there's no there's no ability to like actually think of what would be helpful for me right now, even as a temporary solution, like from a very simple perspective to like, you know, oh, I could get a babysitter, or oh, I could get a mother's helper, or oh, I could, I don't know, sign up to the museum, I don't know, the museum, whatever it is. Like, there are actually solutions. There's resources. I was so blinded by fighting my reality that I didn't even, I wasn't even thinking. So in the acceptance, allowing for energetically actually ownership to happen, where like I totally lost myself. I got completely fixated on the challenge and how my husband was not showing up, and now like, okay, now that I'm breathing and I'm on my back, right, and I'm floating, okay, so what is around me, right? Maybe there are some lifeboats that are not going to offer a permanent solution, but maybe they're going to offer a temporary solution. And I can see them now because I'm not like thrashing and, you know, panicking.
Right, right. So it actually allows you to move forward,
Yeah.
right? I love that. So, like, your body is calm, your experience is calm, everything's okay. And your nervous system is like reset, right? So you're not completely in survival mode. And then you could actually bring your prefrontal cortex on board and figure some things out, right? So, okay, beautiful. Should we give an example for that, like of what that would look like?
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, we'll bring like the juxtaposition. So imagine a woman who, right, so her husband is this like absentee parent, and she wants to go out, I don't know, to for bring into speech something at night, right? So she wants him to do bedtime. So the idea is that if she's in this space of like he's supposed to show up, how could he not? Why is he always working, right? So she's in this survival mode, or she's in this mode of like, I have to pick up all the broken pieces, where he says that he's gonna do something and he doesn't show up for me. As opposed to right now, in this moment, we're calm, right? So she's coming to him from a place of calm and acceptance. Let's say your acceptance is he's not available at nights. He's not available for the kids at nights, right? And she still decides to approach him and say, I'd love to go to this Farbrengen tonight. Are you available to watch the kids? Please, can you watch the kids? Right? So here's where I want to kind of go back to, there's going to be some time in shifting the dynamic. But what might happen is he might say, oh, I was going to get together with friends tonight, or I have a business meeting at 8:30, so I don't see how that's going to work out. Right? So if she was in that state of mind where it can't be like this, and I'm struggling against the reality of what is, so then she would get really triggered by that response. It would be personalized. It would be so upsetting, painful. The whole experience would be another evidence for how much he doesn't show up, but not accepting that reality. Right? It's just a complaint and how horrible her life is, as opposed to, this is not surprising if he says that he already had a meeting, right? This is okay, right? She is already taking care of herself enough to know that this is life, okay?
Right.
And
She's aware, because she's out of denial, that it's very likely that he won't be available. She's trying him because he's her best option, but the no doesn't put her back in that state
yeah,
of like
right,
shock and you know. So she takes the no, and then
right. And then there's many different options, right? So the option, right, because she has her mind on, she could be like, okay, fine, so then I could get a babysitter, or she could even still open up the line for him to still help her, right? So if she's in this state of acceptance, there isn't a wall up. I think that's a very important thing to bring in over here. When I'm struggling, my trust is on the line, our relationship is on the line, everything is on the line. So she already has built so many walls of self-protection because she can't rely on him for all the different reasons that she's seen in the past. So all these walls are up. So let's bring in the 4 factors again, right? So if she does this first level of acceptance, she's already in a good place. This is like, she's good. She's taking care of herself. She's in a good place of like, I can move forward. I don't have to feel like I'm suffering, like I'm laboring, like this is okay, right? So she's calmer. He's in a good place in that, and this is where women get stuck, where it's like, oh, we just let him off the hook and he could do whatever he wants. That's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is we now have stopped oppressing him and nagging him and emasculating him. And we're giving space to see how the dynamic will shift. When she's letting go and she's letting acceptance come in, what she's actually doing is she's owning her circle and she's letting go of his circle. So now what's happening in him is he's not being oppressed, he's not being nagged, and he can actually start looking at himself and looking at his circle. Now, it doesn't happen right away. It's going to take some time, but at least what's happening is he feels good about himself because he's not a constant failure in her eyes. He's at least no damage is being done. He's still himself in everything that he's doing, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more in step 2. But so far, no damage to him, right? Step 3, their relationship. The relationship is in a better place. Why? Because she's in a place of now, I took down some walls. I kept on putting up walls because he keeps on not doing what he's supposed to do, right? Where he's supposed to show up, how it's supposed to work, right? And those walls are there in order to prevent you from experiencing the deep pain of a basic need. And instead, there's this acceptance of, this is what it is. And now I can open myself up to still see there's so many other aspects of him and the relationship. And that's where we're going to bring in, I'll just say it right now, step 2, right? Step 2 would be abundance. Okay? So step 2 is looking at the abundance of what is there instead of being in a state of lack of what is not there, right? So the challenge was a lack, and she was stuck in lack instead of everything else that might be in that relationship. So the relationship was suffering because of this challenge, lack. Now she's going to look at it from step 2's perspective, which is, let me now look at abundance. What is here? How is he showing up? Not as a father, not necessarily in the realm of this specific challenge, but in general. How is he showing up? Yes, we know he's great in every single way except for this. Okay, so then let's look at all the different ways that he is showing up, that he is great, that he is a powerful mashpia. And we want to see that. The more that she can grow into the abundance, the more the relationship starts to thrive. Because when she's in a state of lack, then she's putting up walls because no woman wants to feel like she doesn't have what she wants. But when she's made this inner shift of seeing the abundance of what she does have, those walls start coming down and she could start trusting the things that are already there, right? So let's say, for example, he's a super successful businessman, which is why he's such a bad father, right? But he's a super successful businessman, which means that in her life, he is mashpia in a certain way. There is an area where he's giving, she is receiving. She's greatly benefiting from that. I want her to really look at it and see it so that she could start bringing down those walls of fear and self-protection and bring up feelings of trust and start building the relationship. Okay? So step 1 and step 2, working in tandem, are working with these 3 factors, and these 3 factors of the relationship are doing well. They're building. They're on a journey towards birthing something good, which is huge.
Yeah.
Does that make
2
sense?
things that, yeah, very much so. And I just want to highlight that one of the ways that you know you're in scarcity mindset is when you're looking at one thing as if it's everything. this one thing means everything. Like our whole relationship is being defined based on this one lack. Your whole worth is being defined. The whole stability of our home is everything. Like if you're putting everything on one thing, that's an indication that you're operating in a scarcity mindset, and you're obviously putting everything on the one thing that isn't working. So your hyperfixation, and again, it's a natural reaction because we look for what needs attention, right? What needs my help? And maybe like an example that we could also bring is like where people talk about like a holistic approach versus like maybe a conventional approach of like, do we need to attack the disease itself, or do we want to address the environment? And actually, in this case, almost ignore the disease, so to speak. We want to ignore the specifics, not ignore. We want to accept that they're here. For now, we don't have a way of treating them directly. So let's shift our focus to the whole environment, which is what you're describing. Shift your focus away from the specific challenge. Let's look at everything else. First of all, let's look at everything else that's working, and let's build on the things that are already there. Noticing them and investing in them. And it's again, like, first of all, now I can talk to my husband. Now we can hang out. Like we can actually just on a practical level enjoy each other's company. Like when a woman's hyperfixated on one issue, every time she's with her husband, they're talking about this issue, and it becomes exhausting and draining, and they're not enjoying each other's company, and they can't actually do it. He can't have any conversation with her because it's always going to come back, well, I can't talk to you about that because we have to address the pressing issue, which is how you're not present. So as soon as I shift and like, okay, there are other pieces, there's a whole picture here, there's a whole body outside of this one organ that's not performing up to standard. Let's be there for a minute, right? Let's like bring our energy there. So like just creates abundance, expansion, because there's a lot more going on over here. And even like you said, if I want to like re-look at the issue from this open space, so then I can say, is it 100% true that he's not contributing anything to my children and he's completely absent as a father? Because now I'm in a broader and more expanded view. So now I'm able to say, well, he is an incredibly ambitious businessman, and that comes with a certain access to finances, which opens doors for me to get support and resources, and that is a massive contribution. Like we're directly receiving from him all the time. So the whole thing is completely a different experience.
Right. Like imagine if you're going to a physical therapist and there's like one muscle that's just not working so well. That physical therapist is not going to only work on that muscle, because you're just going to tire out the muscle that's already not working well. They're actually going to start working on the whole muscle group, because the whole muscle group needs to be strengthened or needs to rest because they've been overcompensating for that specific muscle. So it's just like a broadening of, I love that you're bringing up like a body example. Like there has to be this broadening of your mind. I'll give you an example. I like the example of what you're saying about finances, but I think this is also a good example for me. So my husband's a rabbi, right? So the fact that my husband's a rabbi of a shul and he works, so that took up a lot of his time. So I could be in this mind frame of work is his priority, and community leader is his priority, and where are we, his family? Nowhere to be seen, right? Or, and again, there's this broadening. Once I'm not in survival mode anymore, I could actually start looking at where he is being mashpia. Where is that mashpia energy being directed? Is it possible that I am receiving from it, right? So, and even my children receiving from it. So the fact that my husband is a rabbi directly impacts my kids. And I know this for certain because my kids hold themselves differently, knowing that their father is a Rav. They feel like it boosts their confidence. It makes them feel stronger as a person. It's definitely a resource for them when it comes to their inner resources of what makes them distinct or unique or special. They hold themselves differently because their father is a rabbi. Did I see that before when I was in survival mode? Absolutely not. But once I was able to take the step back and say, okay, where do I see that my husband is being mashpia? And where is it that I am being mekabel? And it could be I'm even being mekabel without me knowing about it in the specific challenging area. So before I thought, he's an absentee father, there's nothing, he literally gives nothing to our children. Once I started broadening, I could see that even in his job or in him being a Rav was a direct, very strong contribution to our children, a contribution in ways that I would never be able to build them, right? I would never be able to give my son this feeling of my tati's a rabbi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like my tati, like my daddy's a fireman, like my tati's stronger than your tati, like that
It can
kind of
be a
building.
tremendous source of confidence.
Yeah. And I was completely blind to it, right?
Yeah.
So when I start seeing abundance, really like leaning into this step two would be not just seeing it, but like acknowledging it, saying it out loud, reflecting it to my children, reflecting it to my husband, celebrating that there is so much contribution happening here, right? And sometimes it takes the finesse and nuance of a coach to help you see it. So I was completely blind to it until until I got used to seeing abundance and also hearing somebody else's perspective when it came to the abundance that was in my life that I just was used to and didn't really see.
Yeah, and also like again with where we get stuck when we're hyper fixated on the negativity or the challenge or the lack, sometimes the shift feels a little bit like, again, that like, okay, so cute, like let's be real about the real issue. And like, yes, I'm not going to disagree with you. Like, that is really sweet. And I'm so happy for them. But like, can we just not pretend like there's a glaring issue? And I think like, again, it's a certain approach and it's a certain perspective that comes from that, like very realistic and very logical. And like, we think, and really it's just our resistance to kind of like letting go, leaning back into those waves, like stop fighting so hard. And part of, again, all of these things kind of flow into each other, the ownership of a lot of, and this I do think we've spoken about, a lot of our children's experience and how they see things and how they experience things is through our eyes. So even if they do have a father that's a rabbi, which maybe is a source of confidence for them, but they're hearing all day from their mother how, where's your father? And he's not around and we need him. Where is he when you need him? And oh, the community is more important. So then the child who maybe initially was proud of his father being a rabbi starts to feel like being a rabbi is a terrible thing, right? And like, I hate the fact that my father's a rabbi and I resent the fact. And by the way, you do see like children who come from homes where their parents are like very consumed in community service. You definitely have two different products. You have a child who feels very proud and very like wears that as a badge of honor, and then you have children that are very, very resentful. And possibly it had to do a lot with which path their mother chose to take, what story they were told about their father's position, as it was a terrible thing that their family was suffering from, or it was a badge of honor. It was, we are so lucky, we're so privileged, this is, we are children of a rabbi. And then kids step into that and they can be, again, because you're thinking, so then there's so many ways to bring your children into that and to make them a part of it and it to actually become a family experience. And So you're not being smarter because you're not being smarter and more realistic because you're hyperfixating on the issue. You might actually be drowning because of your fixation. So, okay, it sounds to you a little bit like of a stretch. What do you lose? What do you lose by trying out, right? You're anyways exhausting yourself and drowning. So, okay, so lie back for a few minutes, so to speak, and see what it feels like. Try it out. Try it out. Just test it, right? Like, see what it feels like to try on a different perspective, to go more holistic and expansive in your view of this situation, and let's see what it does for you and for your kids and for your relationship. And from our experience, the reason why we're still here is because it's obviously something that's doing a lot, and it is transformative, and it is helping, and it does completely shift the dynamic and the energy of the home. So we wouldn't be here speaking about this for an hour if it wasn't effective.
Right. But again, like with, the first time you go to the PT, it's not going to be a one-time visit. Like it builds, right? It's something that you're growing into and the dynamic is growing into. And like my kids started saying, trust the process, mommy, just trust the process. So funny.
Yes, it needs repetition, meaning it's not a one time, like, oh, because yes, that also happens. We like try something once to be yaitza, and then we're like, I tried it once and it didn't work. I went to the physical therapist and I don't feel better. It's like, okay,
Right.
It's going to take a lot more investment than that.
Right. So I don't want to leave that example unfinished because we brought up the example, but then we dove into step two. So that example where I need to go to the Farbrengen, right? And I want to go out and I'm opening up the space, let's say, for my husband to step in and take care of the kids or take care of bedtime, whatever it is. And his response, let's say, is, oh, I had a meeting tonight, or I was going to hang out with my friends, right? So in that experience, what's happening is if I'm in a place of, I've done the acceptance piece, right? I'm not floundering, like I'm taking care of myself and I'm also accepting the reality of what is. And I'm also at the same time celebrating the greatness and the abundance of what is, right? So his response of, oh, I was going to do something is not devastating, okay? Now, in that moment, I could say, okay, so what should we do? Right? Like what? Okay, so what now? I don't have to like pick up all the broken pieces and now I have to take this upon myself and now I have to suffer more because he never shows up for me, right? It could also be, okay, so what do I do now, right? So if we're talking about a mekabel wanting to receive more from her mashpia, right? But she's accepting that this is the kind of mashpia that she has. And she's also celebrating and she's fully receiving everything that he is giving. And then she says, you know what? I'm also willing to open it up a little further and say, what does my mashpia want to give me now? Right? So I'm just widening a little bit more. Okay, so to give you the quick example of what the Friedrich Rebbe talks about when he talks about mashpia and mekabel. In the mimer, the Friedrich Rebbe says the teacher teaches, he's the mashpia, and the mekabel, the student, receives. Now, what if the student asked a question? And he asked a question that the mashpia never even thought of before. What's happening is the student is the cup, right? The student is the vessel. And he's so excited. He's fully receiving what his Rebbe is telling him. And he loves it. And he says, oh, but Rebbe, and he widens his fingers a little bit more, right? The vessel a little bit more. He says, but Rebbe, what about this? And so he's asking, he fully received what the Rebbe gave him, and he just wants a little bit more. And what that does, it inspires within the mashpia the ability to give more. Okay? So what he's doing is he's engaging with inspiring the mashpia. So in my example of asking my husband, okay, what should we do? Like, do you have any ideas for me? What I'm doing is I'm still open, I'm still receptive, I'm accepting that that he is this kind of husband, right? Or he is this kind of father. I'm not demanding. I'm not saying you put on your father pants now and show up for us. I'm just opening up a little bit more and saying, can you be mashpia? I'm willing to be mekabel a little bit more from you. Okay? There's so much trust there, right? The walls have come down. I'm in a place of abundance, not in a place of lack and scarcity. So his response could be, you know what? I'll learn with my friends at home. Or let me have the meeting at home. Or his response would be, oh, I don't know. Should we get a babysitter? Let's get a babysitter, right? He could say lots of different answers. But what happened over there was, I think, monumental. Because instead of what was happening before was a closing of the vessel, where she's in pain, he's being told that he's not enough, they're both in scarcity, the relationship is suffering, and the challenge itself is still only getting worse. What's happening is that she's good. He's being told he's not bad, right? In fact, she's saying, I trust you enough to open up for you even a little bit more. I'm willing to receive even a little more if you are willing to be mashpia more on me. And that is building the relationship. And in this way, it actually might, we didn't get to step number 3 yet, but it might impact the actual challenge, right? So if he says, maybe get a babysitter. So instead of seeing that as a horrible idea, and I hate that, and I really wanted you to do it, and of course every woman wants her husband to be the one, right, to do what she wants, but he is coming up with ideas. That is a form of being mashpia. So she's like, okay, babysitter, okay. Who do you think can babysit at this time, right? So she's staying open. Now, it could be that the first time he's like, I don't know the babysitter's love. Like, just could you figure it out? And then she goes and she gets a babysitter. But the next time this situation happens, or something similar to it happens, and she still keeps that door open, what could happen is that he sees that she's willing to receive. And then he'll say, you know what, I'm willing to give. I'll stay home. Or I'll get my brother to come and babysit for the kids. Or I can't do it tonight, but tomorrow I could do bedtime and you could just relax, even though you don't have it for bringing tonight, tomorrow night. So that's something in the direction of what we want of all these 4 factors.
Yeah. And again, where you might get stuck is a woman might be like, too little, too late, right? Like, that's not enough. And like, how is that called showing up? And again, you're going back, like, if you find yourself going there, which is like, it is a natural reaction, like,
Oh yeah.
bring yourself back to like, I'm on a path here, right? It's like, again, I'm going to the physical therapist and like I'm in so much pain, and he like worked on me a little bit and I see no improvement, and it's like, this is not enough. I need solutions, and I need solutions now, and I need so it's like, okay, but if you could be in that broader view of like, this is a process, like you said before, trust the process. I'm creating something here. So it's only too little too late if I'm not in a creative abundant space. If I am in a creative abundant space, it's a step. We moved forward. We opened something. The shift, the dynamic, the possibility, everything is moving in the direction that we all, both parties, husband and wife, want it to be moving in. So we want to maintain that perspective in the response.
Right. Meaning that if it's too little too late, she hasn't done the acceptance piece or the surrender piece well enough as well, not just the abundance piece, right? Those have not really fully settled. And I will say that we fluctuate, and it's not like we have ever achieved step 1 and then we discard it and we're like perfect in step 1 and now we're going to be perfect in step 2. You could be working on this for years and suddenly fall back on an old belief or an old expectation and feel it really strongly. This is a constant avodah. And right? So just to outline step one, which is like the surrendering, the deep acceptance, and the step two, which is celebrating abundance. Step three would be opening the door for the mashpia to give more, to be a co-creator within this challenge, right? In this specific area, you want to start creating space for your husband to step in this area. Now, important to say that when you're opening up the space, it's not necessarily going to be that when you're opening up the space for the mashpia to give, that he's going to give exactly parenting or doing bedtime, right? It could be that he'll start, I don't know, showing up for supper and then leaving, but he was never at supper before, right? That's a big deal. Or he'll start doing divrei Torah at the Shabbos table, and that was never happening. And that's amazing, right? So it's not bedtime, be a good parent, but it is something towards him being more mashpia than he was. It could be, and this could be really hard, it could be that now he's making more money, right? And that's the way he's being more mashpia, and it doesn't have anything to do with parenting and being a better father. But if she's in that step one and step two, then she's celebrating the abundance of what it is. And then she could get to step three, where she's opening up the door to give her even more. She's willing. She's open.
Yeah, and I think just on a practical level, what that looks like when you're creating those possibilities is also more flexibility of not needing things to look in such a specific way. So the parenting that you had in mind, or the involved parent you had in mind, and what exactly that looked like, when we're talking about, surrender, abundance, and creating opportunities. So creating opportunity means not being so specific about how things have to look, and being able to take a step back and being able to be flexible and open to a relationship looking in, things happening or things unfolding in your husband developing a relationship with your children that you didn't have, you didn't know was an option or necessarily value before. And again, that also feeds into, maybe how the dynamic got that way to begin with. So again, in that creating space, you're gonna want to lean into that openness, that flexibility. Not everything has to look exactly the way I think it should look. And that just, again, allows a little bit more freedom for people to be able to show up in the way that they actually can. And it's also connected to the acceptance of like, well, then when they parent, this is what it looks like. So if you don't have space for that, then you can go back to what was, which is zero involvement. And very often women get stuck in that, like, I don't like what it looks like when he shows up because I need him to show up differently. So I need him to show up the exact way that I need him to. And that's, again, where we're getting stuck. So maintaining that openness and that flexibility and allowing the person to be who they are and show up in the way that they feel and want to show up, and like let that be and celebrate it and enjoy it and let it grow.
Yeah, beautiful, right? Like I'm imagining like suddenly he's coming home and he's doing bedtime his way, or he's suddenly disciplining kids. Since when are you disciplined? You don't even have a relationship with them. How could you start disciplining them? Like I totally hear you. And if that is happening, right, there's so much to celebrate and to lean into, right? Like there will take, I think it's also important to say, like, it will take time for the dynamic also to settle, for him to experiment with being a father. He's never been a father before, right? So what does that look like to develop a relationship with a child? You've had, I don't know, 10 years to do this. He's just starting now. Not fully, right? Obviously not. But there's a settling into this new dynamic that has shifted, right? So she's been doing everything and now suddenly things are changing. So just continue opening up space for that to settle the way it's supposed to settle.
Yeah, and just like a concluding thought, as we're closing this up, we ran with one parenting example, which I do think is a lot of people will relate to, but really you could plug in another example. And just to throw one out there, if the topic that we had chosen was your husband's approach to his health, let's say, going from him being someone who you felt like made very unsafe choices, and that was your crisis. Again, surrender, acceptance, abundance, creating space for opening the door for the process is going to look the same in this context. And I think in most, like, again, obviously there's always exceptions to everything, but there's so many challenges that we will apply the exact same routine, and it will be applied effectively. So if you're thinking, okay, it makes sense with that one, but with my one it doesn't, first of all, feel free to challenge us and send it our way. But it probably does. And if you aren't able to apply it, so again, reach out, get the support to see how you would navigate it in your specific challenge. But yes, it does apply, and it will be effective.
Yeah, definitely helps to get another point of view, because there are so many blind spots on that journey. So just like you hire a doula or a midwife to help you birth something, I highly suggest getting someone, obviously a coach, I'd say, but someone to help you birth your life the way it's supposed to be. Thank you so much for joining us, and looking forward to hearing your feedback.